We need to be more like McDonald's. We need McDonald's thinking. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about the customer. The value is in the system. The worst thing you can do is give a standard to somebody and say, that's how to do that process. Go and follow it. Always think about improving the system. People need to feel ownership of the standard.
So Ryan, last episode, we did a deep dive into this thing called standard work, which some people call SOPs. There's like a million different words for it. It's basically like, how do you do something the same way every single time in every single part of your business? Mm-hmm. This is a part 2. So if you haven't checked that out, link in the description. Go and listen to the first one first. This is going to be an absolute nitty-gritty deep dive. We've got loads of great questions people submitted where they have very, very specific things that they want to know about as a follow-up to that episode. And the first one I think is amazing. My standard works are too detailed and people don't want to follow them because they don't want to be told, the example they give here was, they don't want to be told, please use your left hand to reach into this specific box and do it that way.
Yep.
How do you feel about detail whenever it comes to standard work, and how do you help navigate that for people?
Great question, and a good way to start this episode, because it's something that we struggled with for a long time and it became more clear to me about a few months ago. Something we were doing wrong was in our standard works. When we created standard works for how to do a process, we would put far too much detail into the standard work. You know, we were right down to use your left hand to lift the drill, and it was too detailed. Nobody was ever going to follow that. And if they're not going to follow it, you might as well not even have it. Then the flip side of that was some of our standard works or SOPs or instructions, whatever you want to call it, some of our standard works were too high level that they almost didn't cover the critical components. So what we're always trying to get good at is not too much detail that people won't follow, and not too high level that it doesn't give you the critical points.
Yeah, because ultimately, like, if people don't use the standard work, then that's the biggest waste of all, because you're not actually using the tool for the purpose that's being used for, which is what we talked about last time, which is to identify areas of improvements and also make sure that things are done to the correct standard every single time.
Yep.
There's another really interesting question here. This is probably more, I'm not going to give your answer, I'm just going to give the question. That's my job here. How fast should you expect people to complete a specific task in a standard work? Because they say here, some people are going really fast and some people are going really slow. So what is the standard time that people should have on their standard work?
So set the standard work at the pace that an average operator can do for a full day. So the pace that's realistic for a full day's production or a full day of carrying out that task. If it's set too fast, it's unattainable, and we're actually going to do the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. We're going to produce defects. You know, if we're putting burden on somebody to try and achieve an SOP or a process within a certain time frame. Similarly, if it's too slow, it's no good either, because we're trying to get the product to the customer. So that balance is found by the average operator, not the fastest person, not the slowest person, it's that average. And what they can consistently do over a full day.
For the people who do want to go really, really fast, how do you then, like, not pacify them, but or like make them feel like they're not being held back?
Yep, but being really honest, our process is a lot different to the likes of the Toyota facility where they're making a car every 88 seconds. Our process, our takt time is much longer than that. And a few seconds here or there aren't as critical in our business. And I think for a lot of the listeners to the podcast, they're more similar to our type of business than a Toyota style business. So we're not at the level where we're down to seconds or down to minutes. You know, if somebody goes faster, somebody else goes slower, it doesn't really affect the overall time. Our focus is on quality and consistency. As long as we're getting good quality and good consistency, we're not as bothered about the time that it takes, to be really honest. Mm-hmm. And it might be surprising for some people to hear that, because people think that lean is all about saving time and reducing. It's kind of not. It's about quality, sending quality to the customer with as little variation and reducing defects. So timing isn't something we focus a lot on. We focus on quality and consistency, and that's where standard work comes in. That's what helps us to create that quality and consistency.
I think a lot of people will be shocked to hear you say that. I think I'm actually also a bit shocked to hear you say that. But when I think about it, the biggest waste of time is having to rework defects.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those like go slow to go fast moments where it's like, if you can just focus on the quality,
It is, yeah.
then you'll save more time than if you shaved, 15 seconds off that particular process.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense. Is that something that you intuitively figured out how to do, or like did you someone teach you that, or was it trial and error? Did you try to go too fast and stopwatch everybody, or like this is breaking everything?
At the start, when we were inexperienced and we didn't know what lean was, we were actually timing processes and trying to speed them up.
Right.
But we quickly found that wasn't where the big benefit was. There was more waste, or 10 times more waste away over here on the non-value. So when we talk about value and non-value, value is when we're actually assembling the product, when the material is physically, being bolted together, or the staple is physically going into the upholstery. And all the non-value, which is transportation or over-processing or all these other wastes that are on every single business, this is where the big wins are. So to time a process to try and shave a few seconds off, it's a waste of time. It's not where the big benefit is, and we don't focus a lot on that.
Another one here. This is a great question. Actually, this came up a lot. How do I get my team members to feel involved in the standards so that they actually follow the standards?
The worst thing you can do is give a standard to somebody and say, that's how to do that process, go and follow it. So people need to feel ownership of the standard. They need to feel that they had a part or a hand in creating the standard. So that's why Gemba is such a good tool. It's because you can literally get your phone. I could get my phone right now and make a standard work in 3 minutes, but I'm making it at the Gemba. I'm making it in the factory or in the office where the work happens. The standard work isn't created away in an office somewhere. It's created right there with the operator. And it's a conversation with the operator and with the person making the standard. And we're saying, okay, show us how we're doing it right now, and we'll just document it the way it is. But because we're documenting it on the Gemba with the person, with your iPhone, it makes it more of it's a collaboration between the person creating the standard and the operator. In some cases, the operator can even create their own standard as well on the app, but then somebody else has to approve it. But really the point is that we must have buy-in and engagement from the people who are actually doing the work, because they're the people who know best. The manager coming out of the office doesn't have a clue how to assemble the product or the best way to send the delivery or the best way to create the invoice. So they must work closely with the people doing the actual work and get buy-in from them.
Again, it just shows how wasteful kind of like the traditional way of doing things is, where some random third-party external person comes and starts doing all these standards and then just throws them at the person who actually does the work, and the person's like, that's not even right.
Yeah,
that's not even the best way to do that.
Total waste of time. If a standard isn't being updated all the time, it's a useless document. You might as well not even bother. So standards should be a live document. It should be ever changing. As we improve the process, we update the standard. We improve the process, we update the standard. The standard should always be updating all the time, because if we're not updating the standard, our improvements are just a waste of time. We're just wasting time, creating more variation in the process.
Okay, do we follow the standard work every single time?
No.
Okay, next question.
Absolutely not. And one of the reasons why the timing of this podcast is so good is that at our company, we are in the middle of a massive standard work project at the minute, like as we speak. Like when I go back to the factory now, later on after this podcast, we'll have created 10 or 15 more standard works that weren't done this morning. So we are in the process of doing this. We're actively doing it right now. So it's all fresh in my head. So the timing is perfect. And the answer is no, that you shouldn't absolutely follow the standard work every time you go to do a process. It's just not realistic. Nobody's going to do it. There's no point saying, yes, follow the standard work when we actually don't. The goal isn't to follow it every single time. The goal is to have it to refer to. So if we create a defect, the first question we ask is, was standard work adhered to? Was standard work followed? And we go back to the operator and we say, did you follow standard work? Yes, I did. Okay, so you followed standard work and it's still produced a defect. Okay, good. Let's improve the standard. Or did you follow standard work? No, I didn't. Right, okay, you need to retrain. We need to retrain you on the standard. But you absolutely don't have to follow the standard every single time you assemble a product or carry out a task. Nobody's going to do it. Because if you're doing something 20 or 30 times a day, you do know how to do it. But the standard is there to refer to.
But there's even another layer to this where I think by creating standard work, you're exponentially increasing the value of your company because you now have an asset. And if you ever come to a point where you sell your business or you license your business or you whatever, you now have all of these SOPs. And actually I've seen loads of people do this in manufacturing spaces. I was talking to a painter recently who, when I say painter, it's an $8 million a year business. So they're killing it.
Yeah.
But they actually took all of their SOPs for trade jobs and they sold that as an extra software, almost like a digital product software component to their business. With all the standard work that they put all the work into creating of how do you price a job, how do you do this, how do you do that, we're able to package that and sell that to other people in different industries.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that is amazing. And since working with you, anytime someone's like, oh, I want to start a podcast, we're able to send them like our entire SOP library. We're like, here's how we do everything. Go ahead, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
But we never would have done that. It's like how to turn any business into McDonald's, which are kind of like the king of standard work.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because the value is in the system. When you're selling a business, the value, what's the potential buyer looking for? They're looking for a system. And what we're doing as continuous improvement practitioners, as lean practitioners, we're improving the system. We're developing the system. And the goal ultimately is to have a self-managing business that you never have to walk in the door. That's really what we should all business owners should be striving for, that, a self-managing business. But how do you have a self-managing business without good standards? You can't. It's so important to document, systemize, get all the knowledge out of everybody's brains, free up their mental capacity and improve the system. So we're always improving the system and we're putting the value in the system. We need to be more like McDonald's. We need McDonald's thinking. We need our people to think, if I'm off tomorrow, who else can do this job? If I'm off on holiday, who can step in to do this? You're always thinking about improving the system because guess what? It's not about you.
Right.
It's not about me. It's about the customer.
And that's a really interesting point as well because let's just take the burger metaphor forward because it's almost lunchtime. I could be like the master burger flipper and I could make like 5 times more burgers than anyone else in one day to a great standard because I'm so skillful and I'm so great. But if I get sick or if I go on holiday or if the business wants to scale to 30 locations, my expertise, my brilliance is actually totally irrelevant. But if I use my expertise, my brilliance to be able to create a system and a standard work where a 16-year-old can even do half of what I can do, that is insanely valuable.
We always say every problem we have is a standard work problem. It really is. So if we send a defect to the customer, okay, what happened? Oh, well, we didn't follow standard work or we had no standard work. So with that one line, you could change your whole business.
Yeah.
Every problem is a standard work problem.
On the last episode, you said that your standard work should be at the location of where the work's happening.
Yeah.
What do we do for infrequent tasks where there mightn't even be a fixed place where we do it? Where do you keep all of those SOPs?
Yep. We have loads of different examples of how we store our SOPs. Some SOPs are a QR code which we just scan with our phone and it takes us to a video. At our morning meeting area, for example, we have a ring binder, attached to the side of the wall, and we have 10 documents in there, and we can flip to the one we need. So how to set up the mic for the morning meeting, how to set up the TVs, how to put the music on. And do we follow it every day? Absolutely not, because we know how to do it. But if that person who organizes the meeting is off, I can step in and I can run the meeting. So it's about thinking about the next person all the time, thinking, if I remove myself, can this process still be carried out by somebody else? And if so, then we're all good.
Tom Hughes, the founder of Gammadocs, he talks about this a lot, where those infrequent tasks are wee things where you do them I can't remember what his cadence is, but for me it's maybe every month or maybe once a quarter. And then you almost have to, every time you do it, figure out what the best way of doing it is again. Yeah. And I'm doing a bit more traveling now, so I take a flight once a month. And that frequency is usually by the end of your trip, you're if only, I'll give you a really silly example. I need to remember to pack portable shaving foam next time. And it's so fresh in your head, and then you'll forget about it. And then the next month you go, I really wish I had packed portable shaving foam this time. And you could just be stuck in this infinite loop of just So I have a wee QR code now. I bought a separate backpack for traveling. I have a wee QR code, and it's every time I go to travel, I just scan it and it takes me to my really simple, it's my packing list. And if I'm on the trip and there's something that I don't have, I just make sure that I add it to the packing list, because it's just long enough that I forget or I don't implement it. And so having that QR code means that I don't have to print something out every single time, and it's imagine having a big massive standard work thing stuck on my backpack. It's not feasible. That wee QR code, it works for me.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So this next one here is it's a wee bit more spicier. This is where we turn into a bit more of a tabloid show all of a sudden. So they say, "Hi Ryan, thanks for the podcast, really enjoyed it. I have a few team members who are refusing to document any of their processes. They are not interested in creating or following SOPs. What would you advise I do?"
Yep. Okay. So I think the first thing is that the culture has to be in place, or there has to be clear direction from leadership as to why we're even doing this. What is the point? Why do we even have standards in place? And we need to take it right back to the customer. So it's not about us. It's not about your ego. It's not about people doing it different ways and thinking their way is the better. It's not about you. And that might sound a bit harsh, but it's about serving the customer at the highest level. So in our company, we make chairs for nursing homes and care environments for patients who really need our product, and it's changing their life. And there's a lot of emotion attached to the product that we make. So at our morning meeting, we show photographs or videos from customers, telling us how our product has impacted their life. So when we're assembling the product or we're welding the product, it's not about the guy welding. It's not about me assembling the chair. It's about the customer. So what does the customer need? The customer wants consistency. The customer wants perfect quality. They want the product sent on time. How do we do that? Well, we need to set standards in place so that you haven't got 5 different people doing it 5 different ways. And the only way to do that is to agree on a standard. And I don't mean the detail of you must assemble the product with this hand and lift the tool. It's not down to that micro level. It's just saying these are the critical points that are really important for the customer, and this is the exact way to do it.
So you actually will get the team or the department together, and you'll almost it's almost like a lean off where it's show me your way, contestant number 1, show me your way, contestant number B, okay, everybody vote. Is that kind of how it works?
Absolutely, yeah. Get 2 or 3 people together and test, run the experiment, try 2 or 3 different ways, but we must absolutely confirm and land on one standard. It must always end with one standard.
So that's great, and that makes sense if your people are bought in. If we go even maybe one step up, maybe the person who wrote this question, maybe they're not going to be able to get that sort of buy-in from their people, and maybe actually 90% of their team could even be hostile to any type of change, never mind something like this.
Yeah.
So for that person who is really struggling, you know, again, think about you 10 years ago. It's like, how do you start to turn potentially a massive ship of their business and a massive team to start to care about this stuff? And what do you do with bad actors and people who just couldn't be bothered and go stuff yourself? I don't want to do this. I just want to do my job, get out of my face. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. I've got an absolutely, I think, a good answer. And what you should do or could do, or what would be really beneficial, is to start at the processes closest to the customer. So without trying to do standard works all over your company and creating this big change and everybody's all kind of mixed up with this new obsession that's been brought in, start with the processes that affect the customer. So go to the end of the line. For example, in a manufacturing production setting, go to the last process and implement standards there. Yes, there might be variation within the process, but by the time it gets to the end, at least we're catching it before the customer sees it, and then work back. So if the people at the end of the line aren't following standards, we're absolutely going to be sending variation to the customer. So the first place to start on day one, after listening to this podcast, is to start at the very, very end of the line to the processes that affect the customer, and then work back. And it is going to be a journey. It's going to be a cultural shift. There's no point saying anything different. And it may take a while for every single person to follow standard work. But it's a journey like everything, and we have to start somewhere. But what I would say is start closest to the customer.
I'm going to really try and nail you on this, okay? Like, 50-year-old man has been working in my business for the last 30 years, and I've come in and I'm new to leadership, and I'm trying to encourage him to standard work and this whole SOP process. And he literally tells me, like, clear off.
Well, if that person's at the end of the line and the next person in the process is the customer and they're not willing to follow standard work, that person shouldn't be there. Mm-hmm. And I maybe haven't been that candid on a podcast before, but that's what I think. If they're not willing to follow standard work, and their next process is the actual customer, well, then that person needs to find a different role within the company or somewhere else. But it's so critical. The whole reason business exists is to serve the customer.
Right.
That's the reason we're all here. The customer pays the wages. The customer pays the electric bill. The customer pays for the Christmas party. The customer pays for everything. The customer's keeping the lights on. So the most important person in the organization is not the people assembling the product, it's not the managers, it's not the owner of the company, it's the customer. So if somebody is saying, I'm not going to follow standard work, really what they're saying is, I'm not willing to do my best to serve the customer.
Right.
And if they're not willing to do that, you might have the wrong person.
I think kind of like to wrap up, or like the final question would be, like, for someone who is really bought into the whole lean idea, and like they've maybe listened to a few of these podcasts and they're like, yes, I love it, this is great, I really want to implement this, but they just feel like they've got no support whatsoever or no buy-in from anybody on their team. Like, they feel lonely in their leadership journey, and leadership is incredibly lonely. Like, I don't need to tell you that. What would you say to that person? Like, to give them a bit of hope, or to give them a bit of next steps, or a bit of courage?
Yep. So a couple of things. Number one, first thing you could do is surround yourself with other people that are excited about it. And there's a couple of different ways of doing that. There's loads of lean WhatsApp groups around the world. I'm in loads of them, but it's a place where people share ideas. There's lean summits, there's events. Go and surround yourself with people who are excited about it. The next part of that is, if you're in a company and you're so excited and so passionate, you've listened to all the podcasts, you totally get it, but nobody else is on board, there's a couple of things you can do. Number one, focus on yourself. Make your processes so efficient. Create standards in your area. Become the example, and you will attract the attention of other people. And you'll slowly but surely build a small team of people that get it, and that team will start spreading out. And then the next thing, if that doesn't work, and I'm being very candid again, if that doesn't work and you know that you have these skills that are being underutilized, go and work somewhere else.
Yeah.
Leave and go and work somewhere where you're valued and that you can get the chance to express your creativity.
Candid Ryan. I love it. What a way to end. We're going to get more Candid Ryan coming up in future episodes, I think. So we're really looking forward to it. Genuinely, thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. Really, I mean, this is why I love the question and answer model, because like you go into detail that
really
like,
good,
we
isn't it?
could never have just like, you know.
And it's real questions from real people who are sending them in. It's brilliant.
Yeah, 100%. So Gamma-Docs, we talked a lot about Gamma-Docs in the first episode. You mentioned it briefly in this one as well. People can get started today. It's an SOP creation machine on your phone. That's not approved copy. I just made that up there now. But there'll be a link in the description. You can get started today. And it's an all-in-one app that you can roll out across your whole team to get started to actually like implement this stuff.
And I think to add to that, the fact that we're actively using Gamma-Docs in our factory,
Yeah.
and feeding back that information to the Gamma-Docs team. So we're being our own customer, you know. So this isn't some random software company in Silicon Valley. This is lean people building lean software.
No better way to end. Mic drop. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate you.
Thank you.